Hey guys, tonight we return to the silence. Only now it has teeth. Last time we washed up broken. A storm took your ship. The ocean took your breath. And an island empty, endless, took everything else. You found water. You found a cave. You survived. Barely. But survival isn't stillness. It's hunger. It's motion. And now, after days of carving marks into stone and speaking into the dark, just to hear your own voice, something stirs in the trees. A boar, a shadow, a living thing that doesn't need you, but might just save you. You're not a hunter, but you're starving. And this is the beginning of something worse than loneliness. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you listening from? And what time is it where you are? I always like to know who's tuning in. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Besta, you wake up stiff. The stone you've been using as a pillow has left a mark across your cheek, and the dew has soaked through the edges of your rough leather wrap. The fire's long dead. No smoke, no warmth, just the sound of small wings fluttering through leaves above you, and the faint hiss of the wind moving through tall grass. Your stomach growls. It's not a suggestion. It's a threat. There's nothing in your little shelter worth keeping today. You take the knife, your small iron lifeline, and your pouch of salt. The flint stays behind, tucked in its dry nook. You'll only need it if you survive the next hours. You leave the hollow tree and start walking toward the stream again. Same direction, same brush, but everything feels different. Like the forest has noticed you now, like it's watching. You move slowly, half hunched to stay quiet. You've learned not to step on dry twigs, not to swipe branches too loudly, not to walk too close to the trees that leak sticky resin and strange scents. You keep an eye out for mushrooms, berries, anything. But you've already stripped most of the nearby forage days ago. Even the ants seem to be hiding today. By midday, the stream comes into view, same as you left it, clear water, trickling over pale stones, bordered by broad green leaves and dark soil. You crouch low, squinting toward the clearing on the opposite side. Nothing, but you wait. You've been watching this spot for 3 days now. The boar, or what you hope is a boar, came through at sunset each time. Thick-bodied, black hair, head low to the ground. You only saw it from a distance once. The other time, you just found the prints. You edge closer, staying in the tree line, choosing a high spot where you can see without being seen. You take a piece of dry bark and scratch a mark into it. Just a notch for time, for memory. You rest your chin on your knees and settle in. It's boring, painfully boring, but that's survival now. Boring, aching, and quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls out, sharp and rhythmic. 3 quick notes, then silence. You whisper to yourself, not today. Then you add, maybe tomorrow. It feels good to say something, even if it's just to the trees. Hours pass. The light changes. The shadows stretch. You count clouds. You dig a groove in the dirt with your heel. You flick a pebble into the grass. Still no boar. Then movement. Far edge of the clearing. The leaves rustle, bend. You squint through the haze of late light. It's not the boar. A raccoon-like creature, smaller than your thigh, sniffs the stream and laps water with nervous flicks of its head. It's not food, not worth the chase. You stay still. The creature leaves. The clearing returns to stillness. You don't move until the sky dims. Your joints ache when you rise. The boar didn't come. Maybe it sensed you. Maybe it came and left before you arrived. Maybe it's dead. You don't know. All you know is the hunger that crawls behind your ribs and the weight of the knife in your hand. Useful, but useless against time. As you turn to go, you pause. The stream gurgles like it's laughing at you. You crouch one last time. Press your hand into the damp soil near the water's edge. No fresh tracks, no sign, but the mud here is soft, and it gives under your fingers like warm clay. You close your eyes and try to remember what food tasted like. Real food. Stew, maybe. Bread crusts. Roasted fat on iron. Your mouth waters. You hate that it does. You move back into the trees. The walk home is slow. Branches tug your sleeves. Bugs hum near your ears. Your knife catches on a vine and almost tumbles from your fingers. You curse quietly and keep going. When you reach the hollow, the sky is nearly black. You push aside the cover of leaves you've woven across the entrance. The fire pit is cold. You dig out the flint. Strike once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Your arms are shaking. On the 4th strike, a spark catches on dry bark, and soon you have a tiny, flickering flame. It's weak, but it's something. You warm your hands. Then you press your salt pouch to your lips and tap a few grains onto your tongue. The taste stings sharp and bitter. You whisper, "Tomorrow. It'll come. Tomorrow." The fire crackles back at you. The forest, for now, stays quiet. You dream of meat, not fire, not rescue. Just the weight of it in your hand. The oily, salty taste clinging to your tongue. You dream of chewing, of swallowing, without flinching, of waking up full. But when you do wake, it's to pain. Your back screams from sleeping, half curled on the stone floor of your makeshift shelter. Your neck is stiff, and your right foot has gone numb beneath the leather wrap you've tied too tight. The fire is out. You didn't keep it going. You couldn't. You were too tired last night to gather more than a few sticks. They burned fast, left only smoke and cold. You sit up slowly and push the leather aside. The air is damp, not rainy, just heavy. Like the jungle is exhaling on you. You check your knife first. Still there, tucked under the folded bark that serves as your pillow. The blade is duller than it was when you arrived. The edge chipped from use on bone. Wood, stone, anything. Really, but it's still metal, still yours. The second thing you check is the sky, or what little of it you can see through the twisted trees overhead. The sun's just begun to rise. pale gold through the green. You still have time. Time to move before the island wakes up. Today's goal is simple. Trap the boar, not kill it. You don't have the strength. Not yet. But trap it. Snare it. At least slow it down. You've seen it twice now. Same clearing. Same time of day. It returns to the stream near the ferns. Drinks. Disappears. Like it knows the rhythm of the island. Like it belongs here. And you don't. You tear a strip from the edge of your cloak. It's already in tatters. But the fibers are strong. You gather vines. You break twigs to the right lengths. Bend them into hoops. Test each one. They snap too easily. You search for younger branches, greener ones, more pliable, better tension. It takes hours. You lose yourself in it. Not because it's interesting, but because it's something to do. Something that feels like purpose. You haven't had that in a while. Eventually, you find what you need. A narrow game trail just west of the water, where the earth is soft and scored with prints. You count 3 sets, not boars, necessarily, but something heavy, hooved. You press your palm into the dirt next to one. The track is fresh, still moist, still clean. Your heart skips. You start building. The snare is crude, bent wood, anchored to a heavy stone, vine twisted into a noose, looped through bark strips. You try to remember the illustrations from a market book. You once saw hunters' snares of the northern tribes. You'd laughed at it back then. Now, it might save your life. You cover the trap with leaf litter and mud. Step back. Test the pull. It's not perfect. If the boar is smart, it'll sense the tension and walk wide. But if it's in a hurry, or distracted, or thirsty, maybe not. The thought is enough. You leave the trap and retreat to your usual lookout. There's a low outcropping of stone overlooking the stream, mossy and half-shaded. From here, you can see, without being seen. The sun is higher now, the shadows shifting. You settle in, and you wait. Again, hours pass. You start counting your breaths to stay focused. 10, 10 in, 10 out, over and over. You scratch another mark into your bark tablet. You murmur a few words under your breath. Then stop. Your voice cracks. It sounds too loud, too human. The jungle doesn't want your voice. Then, rustling, you freeze. It's there, on the far side of the water. The same thick shoulders, same gleaming back, same dark eyes, set low in a long, brutal snout. The boar, it steps toward the stream, snorts, pauses. You hold your breath. It drinks. Your eyes flick toward the trail, toward your snare. It's just a few paces from where it stands. Come on, come closer. Just a little more. But it doesn't. It drinks, lifts its head, and turns the wrong way, away from the trap. You almost stand, almost cry out, almost throw a stone to startle it. But you don't, because you're not thinking clearly anymore, and even you know it. This isn't a movie. There's no clever trick, only waiting, only failing slowly. The boar vanishes. You slump back and exhale. Another day wasted. You trudge back toward your shelter. Just before dusk, your stomach is louder than your footsteps. You feel dizzy. You haven't eaten. Since the handful of sour berries yesterday, you could risk the mushrooms you saw near the roots of that wide tree. But the last time you tried that, you spent a whole night shivering and vomiting in the dark. You pass the snare again on your way back, still set, still empty. You kneel and whisper something you don't mean. Tomorrow. Then you walk the rest of the way home in silence. The fire tonight is harder to start. The bark is damp. The flint slips in your shaking hands. You strike it anyway, again, again. Eventually, the spark catches, a tiny glow in a hostile world. You huddle beside it, chewing a piece of leather. Not for food, just to pretend your jaw still works. Then you sleep, not deeply, not restfully, just long enough to stop being awake. You wake to the sound of rain, not a storm. Not this time, but a soft, persistent pattering that taps against the broad leaves above your shelter and trickles down the stone at your back. You open your eyes slowly. It's still dark, but not night. The air is gray. The world is cold. Your bones feel carved from soaked wood. The fire is out again. Of course it is. You don't move right away. There's no point. Nothing is urgent, except the ache in your leg, where you bruised it, climbing down the ravine 2 days ago. You hadn't noticed at the time, but now it pulses with a dull, spreading heat, a warning. You prod it gently. The flesh around the scrape is warm, swollen, not good. You don't need a doctor to tell you that. Eventually, you rise, stretch, crack your neck. You don't bother talking aloud this morning. Your voice still feels like an intrusion. Instead, you gather what's left of your willpower and limp toward the snare. You know it's empty before you reach it. You can feel it, that strain, gut-deep sense of failure. Still, you check it anyway, because hope is a reflex. You haven't learned to kill yet. The snare is intact. Nothing's touched it. The prints are gone too, half washed away by the rain. Just mud now, just wet leaves. You sink onto a nearby rock and stare at the trail. Your stomach growls. You think of home, just for a moment, of roasted chestnuts and black bread, and the smell of tallow smoke clinging to your clothes in winter. You remember the smithy, the hammer's rhythm, the hiss of iron meeting water. That was a lifetime ago. Another version of you, one with calluses, that meant something. You sit there for a long time, watching the rain. It's hunger that finally drives you to move. You head south, past the stream, into unfamiliar trees. You're not scouting for game, just anything. Edible leaves, roots, even bark. If it comes to that, your leg protests with every step, but you ignore it. Pain is old news now. Pain is background noise. An hour later, you find mushrooms, pale caps, ringed stems. You crouch low and study them. You've seen them before, near the stone outcrop behind your shelter. They smell sharp, slightly metallic, not like food, but not deadly either. Maybe you pick 2 and carry them to the stream, rinse them, stare. Then, against better judgment, you eat them. They're spongy, bitter, and they make your tongue itch, but you keep them down. That's something. You drink water until your stomach feels stretched. Then you make your way back to the shelter and wait and wait. At first, nothing happens. Then, just as the sun crests over the treetops, the sickness hits. It's not violent, not like last time, but it's cruel. Your gut twists, your head spins, and your skin goes cold. You curl on your side and breathe shallowly, wishing it would pass faster or hit harder. Anything but this slow, miserable churn. You sleep through the worst of it, or pass out. Either way, the hours slip by. When you wake, it's afternoon. Your mouth is dry. You crawl to the stream and drink until your sides ache. You survive it, barely, but it's enough to make one thing very clear. You need real food, and soon your body can't take many more guesses. You spend the rest of the day moving slowly, checking old foraging spots, chewing sour leaves, gathering more firewood than usual. You're not sure why it just feels safer, somehow, to have more flame. As the light fades, you climb the ridge above your cave. It's not high, just tall enough to give you a view over the trees. You scan the horizon. No sail, no smoke, nothing but jungle. But as the wind shifts, you hear something? Not an animal. Drums, faint, distant, but unmistakable. You freeze. They come in short bursts. 3 slow beats, then silence, then again, fainter the second time. You crouch low, heart racing. There are people on this island. You haven't seen them, haven't heard them since you arrived, but they're here. And if they're drumming now, they've been watching longer than you realized. A flicker of warmth stirs in your chest, not hope, fear, the kind that starts deep in your spine and spreads like ice. You climb down without lighting a torch. No fire tonight, no smoke. You wrap yourself in what's left of your cloak, hide inside the hollow of the cave, and press your back to the wall. The jungle outside falls quiet, too quiet. Every rustle sounds like a footstep. Every creak is a whisper. You don't sleep. You don't move. You just wait for morning, wondering if the drums will return. The night gives you nothing. No dreams, no visions, just long hours stretched thin between each blink. Every sound stretched taut like wire. You don't sleep, not really. You hover just beneath it, like a stone under ice. When the morning light finally cracks over the trees, you're already sitting up, bones stiff, eyes dry. Your muscles twitch with fatigue. Your thoughts crawl slower than usual, like they had to have given up warmth. You listen. No drums, no voices, just bird song and the distant cough of the stream. Jungle. Silence. Thick and indifferent. You don't trust it. Still, you move, stomach aching, legs stiff, mind dull from hunger and worry. You force yourself to drink, chew a strip of bark, just to trick your jaw into thinking you're feeding it. Then you head out, but not toward the firewood trail, not toward the ridge. You go deeper. You take the long route around the stream, toward the cliffs, where the jungle thins. It's slower, harder terrain, but higher and safer. Fewer shadows, fewer hiding places. You're hunting in your way, not just for the boar now, but for any sign of who else is on this island. or what? After 2 hours of cautious climbing, your patience is rewarded. A footprint, not yours, not the wide, cloven print of the boar either, human, barefoot, pressed lightly into the damp slope, toes splayed, fresh, your breath catches. Your first instinct is to call out something. In you still craves another voice, but you clamp it down. Not now, not like this. You follow the trail upward. Each step feels heavier than the last. The memory of the drums last night still clings like smoke, but curiosity wins out over fear, and you keep going. Then you see it, far below, through a gap in the trees. A faint glow, not sunlight, fire, deep red and flickering, steady, controlled, not some accidental spark from lightning or dry tinder. Someone built that flame and fed it carefully, the way you would. There's movement around it, shadows, too far to see clearly, figures. Your first instinct is to wave, shout, signal, but you don't. Instead, you crouch lower, heart hammering, because something about the fire unsettles you. There's no laughter, no speech, just the rhythmic crackle of flame and the shifting of bodies, too disciplined to be casual. This isn't a campfire, it's a ritual. You stay there for a long time, watching. They don't move much. They just sit in a tight circle, facing inward. Eventually, as dusk threatens, you turn back, and you make a choice. You don't head toward them. You don't light your own fire. You retreat, slow and silent, into the trees. The slope bruises your knees. The underbrush lashes at your arms, but you don't stop until the jungle swallows the last glimpse of that distant flame. Back at your cave, you sit in the growing dark. You think about that ring of shadows, about the fire that didn't warm anyone's face, and about what it means that you're not the only one hiding. The boar doesn't show tonight. The boar, in all its oblivious hunger and stubborn wildness, would have been easier, because you can understand an animal. What you saw today, that wasn't animal. You fall asleep with your hand wrapped tight around the iron knife. It's dull now. Not that it matters. It was never meant for war. You dream faintly of footsteps on wet stone. You wake to movement, not the frantic thrashing of an animal, not the slow creep of night wind, but movement deliberate. Near, you don't jolt upright. You stay still. Let your eyes adjust. Gray light filters into the cave. The fire is out. Again, you've stopped trying to keep it alive. It's too dangerous now, too visible. You listen. There, a soft scuff. Then again, you press yourself against the stone wall and ease the knife from beneath the folded hide you use as a pillow. It's warm from your body, comforting in a crude way. Another sound, not inside, just outside. Something brushing the rock, something with weight. Then it's gone. You wait. Count 30 breaths. Then move, slow as the tide. Outside the cave, the clearing looks unchanged. No footprints, no marks. But the water jar, the one you chipped from stone and placed at the drip edge, it's gone, gone. You crouch beside the empty patch of dirt, still damp from where the jar once sat. Someone was here, someone close enough to steal, but not to harm. You're not sure which is worse. You don't speak, not even to yourself. Not today. Instead, you gather what little you have and move. You don't go far, just enough to feel like you're doing something. You relocate your few supplies: leather scrap, salt pouch, fire flint, knife, behind a thicket of thorn brush, near the hollow under a dead tree. It won't stop a determined searcher, but it's out of sight. You spend the morning in that hollow, rearranging stone and dirt. To create a makeshift cache, you scrape at the earth with your knife until your hands ache. When you finish, you smear your arms with clay and rub it through your hair. You don't want to look clean. You want to look like part of the island. That afternoon, you head to the stream. You've avoided it for days, watching from a distance, but thirst wins, and hunger. You crouch in the undergrowth, scanning the banks. No sign of the boar, no sign of people, just you. And the faint hope of water. You drink with your palms, cupping and sipping slowly, then freeze. A hoof print, fresh, pressed deep in the mud just across from you, still wet in the center. It's back, the boar. You rise, slow and cautious. The last time you tried to follow it, you ended up with a festering leg. But that was before the fire in the jungle, before the drumbeat, before the missing water jar. Now, it feels like the boar is your only thread back to something real. So you follow, not recklessly, not like last time. This time, you move with purpose, quiet, thoughtful. The prints are fresh but sporadic. You lose them more than once. Circle back, pick up the trail again by instinct, more than vision. An hour passes, maybe two. The jungle thickens around you. The light dims as afternoon fades, and then there, you see it. The boar, broad-shouldered, thick-necked, scar across one flank from a brush with something sharp. Not you, not yet, but something. It stands still at a clearing's edge, sniffing the air. You freeze, not out of fear, out of awe. It's beautiful, ugly, yes, brutal and filthy and caked with mud, but beautiful in its aliveness, in its certainty. It doesn't question the ground beneath its feet. It doesn't second-guess the wind. You envy it. You don't move. You just watch. The boar snorts, stamps once, then trots off, crashing through the undergrowth like it owns the entire island. You don't follow. Not this time. You sink to your knees and press your hand into the same mud it walked through. Feel the print, still warm, still real, and for a moment, that's enough. You're not the only one trying to survive. There's something else out here, just as stubborn. Maybe that's all this is: not a fight to win, but a refusal to disappear. You stay like that until the shadows grow too long and your leg starts to ache. Then you limp back toward the cave. It's empty as you left it, nothing else taken. And so you sit, quiet, near the mouth, knife in hand, waiting, not for help, not anymore, just watching, listening for hooves or drums or the sound of someone else breathing. But the night falls and gives you none of it. The next morning comes not with light, but with the persistent tapping of rain on stone. You don't wake so much as rise. Sleep has been shallow lately, a series of half-dreams, woven between long stretches of listening. Your body aches from dampness, and your leg still throbs in low pulses. But it's no longer the raw burn it once was. It has scabbed over, mostly. You take that as a win. The cave smells of wet rock and sweat. You move carefully, stretching stiff limbs, brushing leaves and grit from your chest. Then you do what you've done every morning since the tally marks began. You step to the smooth wall and add one more line. 16. 16 days of breathing. You don't know why you're keeping track. There's no calendar here, no reason. Maybe it's just to make sure you don't lose yourself entirely. Or maybe it's to prove to the silence that you still remember how to count. After the mark is made, you stare at it for a long while. Then you turn away. Rain means no fire today, no dry branches, no sound of crackling warmth. But it also means the people, if that's what they were, will likely stay wherever they came from. Even they must hate getting soaked. You gather your tools, knife, salt pouch. You think about taking the flint, but you leave it buried under stones near the sleeping ledge. Hidden things are safer these days. With your knife tucked into your belt, you step out into the wet morning. Everything glistens. The jungle feels different in the rain, heavier, slower, louder. The usual bird calls are muffled, replaced by the steady patter of droplets on leaves. You walk carefully, placing each foot with care. The mud is treacherous now, eager to take you down again. You're not heading to the stream this time. You're heading deeper, to where the boar might bed down. It's not a plan, exactly. More of a feeling, a magnetism, pulling you toward something that keeps escaping you. It's become less about the food and more about the rhythm, the ritual of the hunt, the pursuit of something that still moves freely. While you rot in place, you pass under low-hanging vines, duck beneath broken branches, brush past ferns slick with water. You count your steps, not out loud, just mentally, to stay sharp. At around 300, you find something unexpected. A tree split down the center by lightning, blackened and raw, still standing. Its trunk is hollowed out, burned through, but the branches above continue to bloom with wet, green leaves. You step closer, reach out, and press your palm against the inside. It's warm, even now. The core is scorched, soft like charcoal. You carve a small X inside with the tip of your knife. Not a tally mark this time, just a sign, a private symbol. If you pass this way again, you'll know it was you who made it. You were here. Then the wind shifts, and so does everything else. Your nostrils flare as you catch it smoke, not burning wood, but faint, ola, like the ghost of a fire long gone. You freeze, scan the forest. Nothing, just dripping leaves. But your gut knows better. You climb. It takes effort, especially with your leg. But you scramble up the side of the slope until you reach a small ridge. From here, the jungle dips into a shallow basin below. And there, near the far edge, Tucked against a wall of stone is a blackened patch of earth. Ash, cold and dead, but unmistakable. You drop to your belly and crawl forward. Slowly, carefully, the ash ring is small, no more than a meter across. Stones in a tight circle, blackened at the tips. Someone made this. Not long ago, you check the center. No coals, no heat. Rains wiped most of it clean. But the shape remains, not random, not natural. They were here, or are still nearby. You feel the back of your neck tingle. You've been alone so long that even the trace of another human feels like an invasion. A crack in your shell. You lie flat in the wet grass for a while, breathing slow, trying not to panic. You want to run, but that would leave tracks. So you back away, same route, same careful foot placements. You even wipe a branch across the wet ground behind you. You move like a shadow now, the way the boar does. Eventually, you make it back to your side of the island, to the cave. It feels smaller now, less like shelter and more like a hiding spot. But it's what you've got. That night, you don't build a fire. You chew on a bitter root you dug up days ago. You sip rainwater from a leaf. You say nothing, even to yourself. You listen, and in the wind, far off, you think you hear something? Not drums, not voices, but flutes. No, maybe birds, or maybe your mind is finally folding in on itself. You curl up on the stone ledge and stare out into the dark. 16 marks behind you. You wonder how many more before you forget what your own name sounds like. And still, somewhere in that jungle is the boar, still free, still alive. You close your eyes and imagine yourself walking beside it, just for a moment. No knife, no hunger, just motion. You breathe, and you wait for sleep to take you. Morning doesn't come so much as leak in slowly. Gray light creeps down the stone walls of your cave, crawling past your face like fingers of mist. You open your eyes to the smell of damp moss and old ash, and for a few moments, you forget where you are. It's not a peaceful kind of forgetting, more like a loose connection, finally sparking back to life. And it stings when it returns. You sit up slowly. Your body argues. The leg is stiff again. It's not getting worse. Not exactly. But it's not healing fast either. You check the scab. Still dark red. Swollen at the edges. You'll have to clean it today. Maybe soak it in the stream. It's been a few days since you dared go that far. Ever since the cold fire ring you found on the other side of the ridge. You dress the leg as best you can with the leather scrap you've been using as a wrap. It smells terrible now, but it helps keep dirt out. You tie it tight, grunt, and stand. First task, water. You head for the stream with caution. There's no shortcut through the jungle, just a winding route you've burned into your memory, marked by a bent tree and a crooked fern that reminds you of a question mark. You listen for sounds. Birds, insects. That's all you want to hear. No footfalls, no flutes. The water is cold against your skin. You kneel in the shallows and let it rush over your wound. The pain is sharp, clean. It forces your breath to catch. You close your eyes and let it hurt. Let it wash you out. Afterward, you crouch on the bank and drink. The water tastes of roots and mud, but it's life. You know that now what real thirst is, what it does to your thoughts. You've drunk from puddles, licked dew off leaves. This stream is a gift. As you rise to leave, you notice something, a print, just one, deep, fresh, a boar's hoof, right at the edge of the stream, half in the mud, half already faded from where the current lapped over it. Your chest tightens. He was here, recently, maybe minutes ago. The thought sends fire through your veins. You scan the forest. Your heart thuds. The trees sway slightly, shedding drops like whispers. But there's no movement, no sound. You drop to a crouch, inspecting the print more closely. The depth suggests weight. The edges are still crisp. Had it been older, the rain would have blurred it. You press your fingers into the mud beside it, lining up the depth, imagining the creature's size again. It's not a monster, but it's no piglet either. He's strong, proud, even untouched by your hunger or your knives. You follow the tracks, not far. Just a dozen steps before they vanish again into the ferns. That's always how it is. A glimpse, a ghost. But now you have something to chase again. The rest of your day becomes about preparation. You return to the cave and gather vines. The ones you know don't snap easily. You braid them with slow fingers, wrapping them around bent branches to create a snare. Not elegant, not reliable, but it's something. This time, you set the trap near the stream, just where the print was. You dig a shallow trench, cover it with leaves, position the loop of vine carefully, anchoring it under a forked branch. The mechanism is simple. If the boar steps in, his weight should pull the loop tight. Should. You've tried this before and failed, but that was before you had time to think. You sit by the stream until dusk, watching the trap from behind a screen of brush. Nothing comes, only rain. Again, soft this time. A drizzle, more than a storm. You wait until it's too dark to see before slipping away. Back at the cave, you don't light a fire. Instead, you sit with your back to the wall, knife in hand, and whisper aloud, not to anyone, just to hear your voice. It's been 2 weeks and 3 days. You say, I think. Your voice sounds rough, like bark rubbed against stone. You clear your throat and try again. You came to the stream today. You left a print. I saw it. I saw you. You're talking to the boar now. It doesn't matter. You don't know I'm here. You say, or maybe you do. Maybe you're just better at hiding than I am. You close your eyes, and maybe you'll step in it. Maybe you won't, but I'll still be here tomorrow. Still watching. The cave answers. With silence. Always silence. You lie down, curling into your usual shape against the wall, and press the knife flat against your chest. Tonight, sleep comes a little easier. Not because you feel safe, but because the hunger is familiar now. It's not sharp anymore, just dull, like everything else. And in the fog of dreams, you see him. The boar standing at the edge of the stream, looking directly at you, unafraid, alive. The trap is sprung. You can tell before you even see it. There's a charge in the air, an absence of bird song, a patch of silence that feels carved out of the jungle, like a warning. Your steps slow as you approach the stream, careful not to snap twigs or disturb leaves. The tension in your limbs is familiar now, like pulling back a bowstring that no longer needs an arrow. You see it. The snare is collapsed. The trench is torn open. Mud splashed. Vines twisted in a way they weren't before. You move closer, and then your heart drops. No body, no blood. The trap caught something. That much is clear. But it didn't hold. The boar must have fought it, ripped free, maybe even dragged part of the snare off with him. You scan the area, every muscle taut. There, in the muck, is the story. The deep scuffle marks, the churned leaves, the streak of broken underbrush leading east. You follow. At first, the trail is obvious. Clumps of hair caught on a thorn bush, a streak of disturbed soil. Then it gets harder. Less signs, fainter prints. The boar is bleeding. Now you find tiny dots of it smeared on bark, but not fatally, just enough to know he's real. You realize something as you move. This is the furthest you've gone from the cave since the night you heard the drums. The thought makes your stomach tighten. You pause, listen. No drums, just jungle. So you keep going. Your body isn't used to this kind of movement anymore. Every step is an argument with your injured leg. Your breath shortens. Your shirt sticks to your back with sweat, but still, you push. By midday, the trail disappears. You're in denser jungle now, near a low ridge of mossy stone. You rest beneath a twisted tree that smells faintly of citrus, trying to catch your breath. You chew on bitter leaves, not for nourishment, just something to trick your mouth into. Forgetting it's empty. Then you hear it. Not hooves, not drums, voices. They come faint on the wind, low and rhythmically spaced. You freeze, pulse, pounding. It's not language. Exactly. More like chants. Two voices, maybe three, repeating something in patterns. Your instincts scream, move, hide. You crawl to the base of a boulder and press yourself against its cold side. The sounds grow louder, then begin to fade, turning east, away from you. You stay completely still until they're gone. When you finally exhale, it's as if your breath has been held for years. You realize your hands are trembling. You never saw them. That's worse. Somehow, you're not ready to meet them. Not yet. Maybe never. You backtrack carefully, returning toward the stream, constantly checking behind you. Every snapped twig makes you flinch. Every gust of wind sounds like a whisper. By the time you reach your trap site, the sun is low. The vines hang limp, broken. You sit beside them, letting your legs go slack. It was close, but close doesn't feed you. You run your fingers over the spot where the boar must have struggled. It's strange. The disappointment you feel isn't just about hunger, it's about failure, about being outmatched by a creature that doesn't even know it's competing with you. And yet, you're not angry, you're fascinated. This animal, this survivor, It's doing the same thing you are, scraping out days, avoiding danger, living in spite of everything. You begin to admire it. You want to see it again, not just to kill it, not even to eat it, but to witness it, to confirm that something else out here understands the same struggle. By the time you reach the cave, night is falling fast. You gather a few dry sticks and make a smokeless fire, keeping it low and tucked deep within the shadows. You eat the last of the roasted fern roots, bitter and stringy, and drink half a handful of stream water you brought back in a carved bark cup. Then you speak again, to the cave, to the shadows, to yourself. You were close today, you whisper. I was close. Your voice is quieter than usual, not broken, just tired, like everything else about you. You lie down on your side, curling your fingers around the knife again. I'll make a better trap tomorrow, you murmur, one that holds. Outside, the wind picks up slightly, brushing the trees, like someone passing their hands through long grass. You close your eyes and imagine it's the boar moving through the dark, somewhere out there, bleeding just a little, maybe limping, but alive. You wonder if it dreams of you. The next morning arrives with no ceremony, just the gray hush of light leaking through the trees, and the cold ache in your joints. You wake in fragments, surfacing slowly from dreams of tangled vines and distant fires. For a moment, you're not sure if the voices from yesterday were real or just echo left over from the night before. But the trap was real, and the blood and the broken vines. You stretch carefully, feeling every sore muscle complain. Your leg isn't worse, at least. The wound hasn't reopened, though it throbs with every shift of weight. You limp to the mouth of the cave and peer out at the clearing. No movement, no boar, no people. Just the trees standing silent, like always. Breakfast is a guess. Scraps of fern, a few bitter berries you tested yesterday and didn't die from. Hunger dulls the fear of experimentation. Everything tastes like soil anyway. Today, the goal is simple. A better trap. You head back toward the stream, retracing yesterday's steps. The jungle smells wet and metallic. The air is thick, clinging to your arms like invisible vines. You try not to think about the voices, but your ears stay tuned to every shift in wind, every pattern in the bird song. You've started to notice the jungle has rhythms, moments of silence that mean more than sound ever could. At the trap site, you squat down beside the wreckage. The boar hadn't just escaped. It fought. You admire the way it had twisted its weight, pulled the vines at an angle you hadn't expected. It was strong, smarter than you gave it credit for. You start collecting materials again. This time, thicker vines. You test each one, wrapping it around your wrist and pulling hard, seeing which ones bite back and which snap like dried straw. Then you scout for stronger wood, flexible enough to bend but not break. You cut it with the knife carefully, saving the sharpest edge by using the worn side for scraping. Hours pass. You build a new snare, this time with a hidden anchor. one of the cave's heavy stones, buried beneath loose dirt and lashed to the snare line. You disguise the mechanism with leaves and mud, covering every hint of unnatural shape. When you finish, you step back and look at it. Not with pride, exactly, but something close to hope. It's the first time since the wreck that you've felt even slightly prepared. Then something rustles behind you. You spin, knife raised. Nothing, just wind or a bird. Still, you don't breathe again until your heart slows. You've stopped trusting peace and quiet. They've betrayed you too many times now. By late afternoon, you return to the cave, this time with a little bark bowl of water, balanced carefully in your hands. You set it beside the fire ring and sit in your usual spot. You look at your hands. They're filthy, cracked, and raw in the joints. The knife has carved more skin from your thumb than from the vines lately. But the trap is set. It's all you can do. You think about the voices again, the strange rhythm of them. Chants, not conversation, not shouting, like rituals, like they were talking to something that wasn't there. You wonder if they live here, if they've always lived here. You wonder what they think of you, a trespasser, a ghost, or just another shadow moving through their jungle. Night falls quickly, as it always does here. One moment, the world is green, and the next, it's ash-colored and shrinking into silhouettes. You light your fire low, not to be seen, just enough to warm your fingers and make the shadows dance a little. You speak aloud again, softly. You're out there. I know it. It could be the boar you're talking to. Could be the people. Could be yourself. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that something is out there. Something else. Breathing. Surviving. You lie back and let the fire crackle itself toward ash. No need to feed it. Let it fade. Let the dark close in. Your last thought before sleep is strange. You hope the boar sees the trap, not because you want it to die, but because you want to know it still exists, that it's not just in your head, that this island hasn't swallowed everything but you. You wake to silence again, but it's not the usual kind. This one feels sharper, too still, too deliberate. The fire is long dead. Its last whispers are buried in a ring of cold stones. You sit up slowly, leg stiff, body heavier than you remember. For a few long moments, you just listen. Nothing, no birds, no wind, not even the soft patter of insects in the underbrush. You don't like it. You grab your knife, more habit now than caution, and limp out of the cave. Every leaf crunch feels louder. The sun is up, but the sky's overcast, like the day decided to hold its breath. You reach the trap site faster this time, your pace driven by a tension you can't quite name. The trees seem tighter together today. The shadows pressed closer. You duck under a branch, heart ticking faster. And there it is. The trap's been triggered. The vine is pulled taut, the ground torn up. Something was caught, and something got away. There's blood, a slick smear of it across the leaves, bright and wet and recent. Your heart stutters. It worked, but not enough. You kneel beside the path the animal tore through, fingers brushing the disturbed earth. The bore. You assume, or hope, the blood trail isn't heavy, but it's there. A dotted line, deeper into the jungle. You stare at it, then glance at your leg. Following would be foolish, but staying feels worse. You make a decision without words. The kind of decision made with your chest, not your mind. You're going to follow. The knife stays in your grip as you move forward. Careful not to disturb the trail. It winds between trees, cuts through low ferns, and eventually descends into a narrow ravine. The air here is cooler, thicker. You begin to hear again tiny sounds, water dripping from somewhere, the distant hum of life returning. You slip once, bracing on a mossy root. Pain shoots up your leg, but you don't cry out. You just grit your teeth and press on. At the base of the ravine, the trail vanishes. Blood smears across a rock, then nothing. No prints, no direction. You stand there for a while, trying to piece it together. The boar must have paused, changed course, maybe lay down, maybe died. You scan the underbrush, still nothing, and then a snap, not far. You drop instinctively, crouched low, eyes scanning the trees. Another snap, closer. You don't move, and then you see it, not the boar, a figure, human, painted skin, bare feet, moving between trees with silent, practiced grace, not looking your way, not hunting, just there. Real, you freeze, every muscle. Locked. The figure pauses, then lifts something from the ground. Could be a basket or a bundle of cloth. You're too far to tell, and then they melt back into the trees, like they were never there. You don't breathe again until the jungle swallows them completely. You stay low, still, and you finally understand the silence this morning. It wasn't nature holding its breath. It was them. They were nearby, watching, maybe, or maybe, just living their lives. Lives you don't understand. Lives that existed long before your ship ever shattered on their shores. You slowly retreat, retracing your steps. This time, ignoring the blood trail. Whatever wounded animal stumbled through here doesn't matter now. What matters is that you're not alone. You knew it before, but now you've seen it. Not just firelight, not just voices, people, and they're close. By the time you reach your cave again, the sun has broken through the clouds. The jungle feels warm again, alive. You sit at the edge of the cave and look out at the trees, eyes scanning every shadow. You whisper to yourself, you're not the only ghost here. You should be afraid, and you are. But you're also relieved in some deep, buried way. It's worse to think you were the last, because fear you can live with, but loneliness will unmake you. You spend the afternoon doing almost nothing, not out of laziness. No, that's a luxury you don't get out here. It's because your brain feels like someone pulled the string out of it, like everything's been wound too tight, and now it's just unspooling. You lie back on the stone floor of the cave. The cool surface presses into your shoulder blades. Your leg throbs beneath the bandage, and your eyes stay locked on the crack in the ceiling above you. It's a small crack, a nothing crack, You've stared at it before, but now you swear it's shaped like a claw, or a lightning bolt, or maybe even a map. That's the kind of place your head is at. You saw someone real, and that breaks something inside. Or maybe it rebuilds it. Hard to say. There's no plan for what comes next. You know you're not going to march out and introduce yourself. You're not waving a flag. There's no flag to wave. Just the broken scraps of your shirt and the bruises along your ribs. Still, you can't ignore it now. So, you begin thinking about the cave, about how visible it is, about how it smells like smoke and ash, about the pile of fish bones you never properly buried. You curse under your breath and force yourself up. You limp outside, checking the tree line. Nothing moves, but the feeling's there. That odd sensation, like someone's watching from far away. The way you used to feel as a kid playing hide and seek. When you knew someone was right behind the shed door, you gather the bones, ashes, anything that looks too human, too lived in. You move them deeper into the cave, hide them behind the curve in the wall, out of sight. Then you sit on a rock and think about Barrow. You can't light one tonight. Not anymore. That's over. The boar, also irrelevant. You laugh quietly, almost bitterly. All that effort, the snare, the blood, the failed hunt, and for what? A trail that led you to a truth you weren't ready for. You pull out your knife. It's still dull. You haven't dared sharpen it on the cave walls for fear of losing more edge than you gain. Instead, you carve a mark in the stone, a big one, a little different than the tally scratches. You don't know what it means. It's not a number. Maybe it's a warning, maybe a memory, maybe just proof you're still here. Later, you climb the ridge just above the cave. It's one of your new habits, scanning for anything strange before sunset. You use a wide, flat rock as your lookout point. It's smooth enough to sit, tilted just enough to see the stream below, where the boar used to drink. The spot is empty now. No boar, no humans, just forest. Still, you don't leave. You watch the sky shift color, pale gold fading to orange, orange to the soft purple that says, "This day's done. Hope you made it count." And then you hear it, a low, distant rhythm. Thump, thump, then silence, then again thump, thump, thump. Like someone slapping a hide stretched tight, slowly, deliberately. Drums. You feel it in your ribs. Not loud, not close, but real. There's a beat, a pattern. It stops, resumes, changes. Tempo. You don't move. You just sit there on the rock, heart crawling up into your throat. There's no mistake this time. Not echoes, not imagination. Someone out there is playing something. You strain your eyes toward the forest, toward the deeper jungle. Nothing, but the sound stays, carries a message, a ritual, a warning. You don't know. You won't pretend to know. But this island just got smaller. You inch back from the ridge, slide down on your stomach, slow and careful, heart thudding to the same uneven rhythm of those drums. Back inside the cave, you curl into the shadows, knife in hand. No fire, no food, just silence again. You thought it was the worst thing being alone, but now you wonder, because now you have something else. Presence, movement, people, maybe even eyes in the trees. And suddenly, the silence doesn't feel so terrible. It felt empty before. Now it feels like protection. Your stomach growls. The mushrooms are gone. You didn't eat today. You're not sure you will tomorrow, but you close your eyes anyway, and you whisper something you didn't expect. Stay away. Because even if you've wished for another voice in the dark, now that you've heard it, you're not so sure you want it close. The next morning is colder, not by much, but enough to make you aware of your breath curling into mist before your face as you inch out from the cave. The forest doesn't greet you with birdsong. No rustle of leaves, no distant howl, no movement at all. Just a tight, heavy silence, as if the island itself is holding its breath. You hold yours too, for a second. Then you hobble to the ridge. No drums now, no fire, just trees and mist. But something has shifted. You feel it in your chest, like the quiet is different than before. Not peaceful, just paused. Your stomach pinches. You haven't eaten anything real in a day and a half. You consider the stream, but the idea of stepping near open water, exposed under the trees, makes your legs weak, for reasons that have nothing to do with hunger. Still, you need something, anything. You check the cave walls. Your emergency stash of dried root strips, the ones you peeled and pressed between flat rocks for days. They taste like ash and sadness, but you chew anyway. The bitterness spreads across your tongue, but at least your stomach stops growling. You should rest your leg, but you don't. You can't, because once you've heard something, once the drums reach your ears and lodge themselves into your memory, you start to wonder what you didn't hear before, what passed by unnoticed, how long they have been out there. So you decide to scout, not toward the sound. That would be foolish, but away from it, deeper into the cliffs, higher into the stony ridges, where trees thin and shadows stretch longer. It takes you most of the morning to climb. You keep to the rocks, favoring your good leg. You move in slow bursts, stopping to listen. Every sound becomes suspect. A twig cracking makes your heart hammer. A breeze nudging the leaves sounds like a whisper. Eventually, you reach a higher shelf. There's a good view down to the stream, across the jungle, even back toward the bend where you first saw the boar. No fire now, no movement, but there, on the far slope, a depression in the grass, a shape. You squint, rub your eyes, look again. Gone. Was it a person? No, just shadow. Probably. You stay up there a while longer, studying the patterns in the treetops, the places where birds don't land. The forest is so thick, it hides what it wants. You're not blind. You just see what the jungle allows. That's the most terrifying part. Eventually, you descend. You take a new route southward, deeper, toward a stretch of mossy stone and rotting logs. Here, the air feels older, wet, fungal. You find a cluster of mushrooms growing along the base of a fallen tree. You hesitate, Last time you ate wild mushrooms. You got lucky. They made you nauseous, gave you the chills for half a day, but didn't kill you. Still, your body's weaker now. Your margin for error smaller. You pull a few, smell them, slice one with the edge of your knife, and watch the color change white to a faint ochre. You wait, no smoke from the cut, no burning on your fingers. Still, it's a gamble, but hunger's a different kind of predator. You nibble a corner. Wait, an hour later, back at the cave, your stomach growls again. Not pain, just hunger. Safe, then safe. Enough. You eat half of one, then lie back. It's not satisfying, but it's something. You glance at the tally marks on the wall. So many now, some deeper than others, some scratched with anger, others barely pressed, soft and tired. You think about adding another, then don't. Instead, you drag your fingers along the stone. You whisper, "I saw them," and it feels like a confession. The boar returns that evening. You don't hear it at first, you feel it. The way the brush moves just outside the stream's edge, the way the insects fall quiet for half a second too long. You peer from the shadows, crouched behind your usual stone. There it is, snout low, ears flicking, muscles tense, but unhurried. It drinks, calmly, like it owns the place. And maybe it does. You raise your knife out of habit, though you know you won't throw it. Can't. Still, it's nice to feel prepared, even if it's a lie. The boar lifts its head, stares right at you. Not directly, just in your direction, nose twitching. It takes one step back, then another, then bolts. Gone. You're not disappointed. You're relieved. Not because it got away, but because something that should run from you still does. In a world where shadows beat drums and forests swallow people whole, it's a strange kind of comfort, knowing you're still a little dangerous to something. You don't sleep well. Too many images looping behind your eyelids. Drums, eyes, a blur of motion on the ridge. You curl tighter into your cloak of dry leaves, knife pressed under your palm, and try to let go. Try to tell yourself the island's still the same, even when you know it's not. You wake with a sharp intake of breath, unsure whether the sound that stirred you was real or dream-born. Your fingers immediately close around the hilt of the knife, still tucked under your palm. The cave is dark. Still, only the faintest blue-gray seep of morning light outlines the entrance. For a moment, nothing moves. Then you hear it again, a thump, distant, muted. Not thunder, not drums, something heavier, slower, like a large footfall against wet earth. You don't move right away. You lie there, eyes wide, heart beating in your ears. It could be anything, a tree branch dropping, a bird taking off, but it didn't sound like either. It sounded intentional. You wait another minute, maybe more, then rise slowly. Every bone in your body protests. Your leg is stiff from yesterday's climb, and the cold hasn't helped. You shuffle to the cave mouth and peer out. The forest is still shadowed, not yet bathed in full light. The mist is heavier this morning, thick enough that it clings to your lashes. You listen, nothing, but you can't shake the feeling that something is watching you, not directly, just observing, the way a hunter watches a snare. It's set hours ago, not with curiosity, but with calculation. You crouch and trace a line in the dirt with the tip of your knife. A habit, maybe, or superstition. Either way, it centers you. You know you can't stay here forever. If there really is someone or something out there, they know where you are now. That fire, those mushrooms, even your trail up the rocks. It was all too careless, too human, and humans are easy to follow. You decide to move, not far, just enough to have options. You pack what little you have. Your root strips, a bundle of half-dried moss, your cloth pouch with the dull stone and bone needle. You take the cloak of leaves, too. It smells like old rot and soil, but it's warm, and it's camouflage, mostly. You leave the cave slowly, circling around to avoid leaving a direct trail. Every step is measured. You brush out your footprints with a bundle of twigs. When you reach a cluster of ferns, a little farther down the slope, you crouch and wait, a test to see if you were being followed. The forest remains still, then movement. Near the cave, you freeze. A shape, half shrouded in fog, not close enough to see clearly. Not animal, upright, tall. You grip your knife, tighter, breath shallow. It doesn't enter the cave, just stands there, as if inspecting, maybe even listening. Then it turns and vanishes into the trees. You wait another 10 minutes before moving again. You head south, not toward the sea. You've already explored that stretch. You follow a line of rocky outcroppings, weaving between them, until you find a shallow overhang just big enough to crawl beneath. You don't plan to stay here long, but it will hide you for now. By mid-morning, the sun burns off some of the mist, and the forest reveals more of itself. You use the light to explore, not far, just scouting, and that's when you find it. A path, not animal-made. No hoof prints, no scratchings. A deliberate path, thin and winding, cutting through the undergrowth. With strange precision, twigs are broken at shoulder height. Ferns pushed aside at intervals, too uniform for chance. You kneel and study the ground. The indentations are faint, but they're human-sized. Not barefoot, though, some kind of wrapping, cloth. Maybe you look back the way you came. You didn't cross this path before, which means someone else did. Recently, a chill rises up your spine. It's not fear this time. It's clarity. You are not alone. You don't follow the path, not yet. But you mark it small carvings on the inside of a tree root, unseen, unless you're looking for them. You retreat to your overhang and wait out the afternoon, chewing the last of the root strips, sipping water from a folded palm. The memory of that upright figure near your cave burns behind your eyes. Night comes fast, too fast. You hear no drums, but the jungle is louder tonight. Crickets, frogs,